There's a specific kind of silence that settles in when two people care about each other but can't quite find the bridge back. It's not the loud crash of an argument. It's the quiet hum of scrolling past a message, the hesitation before calling, the feeling that we're speaking different dialects of the same language. It's the coffee cup left on the counter that signals a conversation that never started. We've built lives where we're hyper-connected digitally but often stranded emotionally, waiting for the other person to make the first move while we both hold our breath. We're all feeling that low-grade ache of being close, yet somehow isolated, like we're drifting on parallel currents that rarely touch. Before we look at what's happening, I want to be clear about how we get here. The Velvet Verdict is a hybrid effort, human intuition guiding AI research to sift through the noise. We use that partnership to ground every insight in real social science, avoiding the echo of algorithms or bias. This transparency matters because healing starts with trust, and trust starts with knowing how we see the world. So, take a breath. This isn't a courtroom. There are no defendants here. Whether you're a man who feels you have to armor up, or a woman who feels you're carrying the emotional load alone, your pain is real, and your desire for connection is valid. We're not here to point fingers or assign fault. We're here to look at the wound together, gently, and see if we can find a way back to each other without losing ourselves in the process. Let's sit with this discomfort for a moment, not to wallow, but to understand. Because on the other side of this isolation isn't blame, it's a path toward reconnection, built on evidence and empathy. So, how did we drift from shared vulnerability to parallel isolation? It wasn't a sudden break, it was a slow leak. We're looking at how societal shifts, unspoken expectations, and the quiet pull of digital habits have widened the emotional distance between men and women. We aren't here to point fingers. Men and women are both carrying the weight of this disconnect, often in ways that feel invisible until the silence becomes too loud to ignore. The wound isn't that we don't care, it's that we've forgotten how to safely show up for one another without armor. We're asking what gentle, evidence-informed steps can help us bridge this gap. How do we rebuild trust in a world that rewards performance over presence? What compassionate practices allow us to close the distance without losing ourselves? We want to explore the direction toward healing, not as a prescription, but as a shared exploration of what brings us back together. This is about finding the common ground where both sides feel heard, valued, and safe to be human. We're inviting you to look at the patterns that keep us apart and consider small, sustainable shifts that honor both your need for connection and your need for self-respect. The goal is reconnection, rooted in the reality that we are all navigating a complex social landscape, and that healing starts when we stop defending and start understanding. We've traded the messy, beautiful work of intimacy for the safety of screens and scripts. These unspoken rules didn't appear overnight. They accumulated over years of cultural noise and personal protection. Yet, beneath the frustration, there's a shared longing. We are asking how we can dismantle these barriers with kindness, recognizing that the isolation hurts everyone. It's about creating space where vulnerability isn't a risk, but a bridge. What the data shows, the loneliness baseline. The numbers tell us this isn't a personal failing. It's a shared reality we're all navigating. Recent surveys paint a clear picture of how widespread this isolation has become. About 1 in 6 Americans say they feel lonely or isolated from those around them all, or most of the time, and roughly equal shares of men and women report this struggle. This balance shows the wound touches us all. Daily reports show 20% of U.S. adults reported feeling loneliness a lot of the day yesterday, marking the highest level in 2 years. A broader national snapshot from May 2024 found 21% of adults in the U.S. reported feeling lonely. These figures reveal a persistent current in our daily lives. Our living structures have also shifted. In 2020, 27.6% of all U.S. occupied households were one-person households, up from 7.7% in 1940. This trend highlights a structural move toward living alone, which can amplify feelings of disconnection even without personal isolation. Isolation is now common and structural. This helps us stop blaming ourselves or each other. When we see that millions of people, across all genders, face similar challenges, it opens a door to compassion. Moving from judgment to understanding, we see that rebuilding connection starts by acknowledging this shared reality. What the data shows, the support gap. Looking at the numbers isn't about keeping score, it's about spotting where the floor has dropped out so we can rebuild together. The data reveals a clear asymmetry in our support networks, showing us exactly where the strain is building. When we face emotional weight, women are significantly more likely to find a safe harbor in friendship. Pew Research finds that 54% of women turn to a friend for emotional support, compared to just 38% of men. This gap widens within the family as well. Women turn to family members, besides their mothers, for support at a rate of 44%, while only 26% of men do the same. The cost of this isolation is visible in our youngest generation. Gallup reports that 25% of U.S. men aged 15 to 34 felt lonely a lot the previous day, higher than the 18% average for young women. These figures describe a shared wound, not a verdict on character. Women often carry a heavier relational load, managing the emotional fabric for themselves and others, which can quietly lead to exhaustion. Men, meanwhile, are falling through cracks where old scripts of stoicism have left them without a soft place to land. The hurt is real on both sides. Women risk burnout from being the primary anchors of connection, while men risk drifting apart from a lack of accessible outlets. Healing begins by naming this dynamic with kindness, acknowledging that these patterns are learned, not innate. Direction, not prescription, suggests we gently expand our circles. For men, practicing vulnerability can be the first step toward reclaiming the friendships that sustain us. For women, recognizing the weight you carry invites us to ask for help and protect our own well-being. By widening the net of support, we can lighten the load for everyone and create a world where no one has to hold it all alone. What the data shows, the relationship and intimacy shift. When we look at connection among younger generations, the numbers reveal a profound recalibration rather than a simple retreat. Among adults under 30, we see a notable divergence in singlehood. 63% of men describe themselves as single, compared with 34% of women. This gap invites us to consider the different social currents pulling men and women in distinct directions, highlighting that isolation often stems from unique pressures on both sides. The desire for connection remains, though expressed unevenly. Half of single men are looking for a committed relationship or casual dates, while 35% of single women report the same intention. Men are signaling interest more frequently, yet the wider gap in singlehood suggests finding common ground is harder. The mechanics of meeting have shifted, leaving many on both sides feeling out of sync. Physical intimacy reflects this broader pause. The share of young adults ages 18 to 29 reporting no sex in the past year has doubled, rising from 12% in 2010 to 24% in 2024. This shift underscores a wider hesitation, where vulnerability feels riskier and the threshold for closeness has risen. These trends aren't moral declines, they're signals that our current scripts need updating. Healing begins when we lower the stakes of connection. For men, this might mean building bonds that don't rely solely on romantic pursuit. For women, it could involve fostering spaces where vulnerability is safe and mutual. By acknowledging these shifts with honesty, we can move toward a new rhythm of intimacy built on understanding rather than pressure. What the data shows, the digital substitute. A quiet pattern emerges in how younger generations navigate connection. It is not rebellion, but a reflection of relational hunger. Recent surveys reveal that 64% of U.S. teens have used AI chatbots, including about 3 in 10 who do so daily. Within that engagement, 16% of teens report having used AI chatbots to have casual conversations, and 12% of teens say they have used AI chatbots to get emotional support or advice. These numbers map a landscape where human companionship has grown harder to sustain. The data describes the wound. When shared vulnerability becomes scarce, we seek steady presence. For young men and women, algorithmic companions offer a low-stakes space to practice opening up. This signals that our relational ecosystems have grown thin. We turn to machines not because we prefer them, but because they reliably mirror the attention we crave. It is a natural response to modern isolation, not a moral failing. We are learning to trust again, one conversation at a time. Recognizing this pattern opens the door to gentle redirection. We can honor the comfort these tools provide while expanding our capacity for human reciprocity. Healing begins when we treat digital companionship as a bridge, not a destination. For young men, this might mean leaning into peer groups that normalize asking for help. For young women, it could look like cultivating friendships where emotional labor is shared rather than shouldered alone. This gentle shift does not demand perfection. It simply asks us to show up, listen deeply, and allow ourselves to be seen. By meeting this hunger with patience, we can slowly rebuild the trust that makes real vulnerability worth the risk. The path forward is not about abandoning technology, but remembering that human connection remains the only place where true belonging takes root. To move forward, we have to hold space for the specific weights each of us carries without letting those weights become weapons. For many men, the pressure to perform strength has created a fortress where vulnerability feels like a threat to survival. It's often a deep-seated fear that showing softness will lead to rejection or loss of respect. When a man withdraws, it may look like indifference, but underneath, there's often a quiet desperation to be safe enough to lower the shield. At the same time, many women carry the invisible burden of emotional labor, managing the relational glue that holds things together until exhaustion sets in. It's the weariness of feeling solely responsible for the emotional climate. When a woman pulls back, it may look like criticism, but it can be a protective retreat from the fatigue of holding everything alone. Here's the hard truth. These patterns lock us into the same cycle. His withdrawal can trigger her anxiety to fix things, and her push for connection can trigger his retreat further. We end up shouting across a widening canyon, each convinced the other is the wall keeping us apart. But the wall is the isolation itself. Neither side is the villain. Both are trapped in a feedback loop that starves us of the very connection we crave. Healing starts with grace. It means recognizing that his silence might be fear, not malice, and that her exhaustion might be a plea for shared burden, not control. We don't need to solve history to offer kindness today. By naming our own struggles and extending patience to the others, we can step out of the cycle. We can meet in the middle, not as adversaries, but as fellow travelers tired of walking alone, ready to build a bridge where we can both be fully human. Building that bridge doesn't require grand gestures. It starts with the quiet work of showing up. We begin by reclaiming shared routines, simple rhythms that ground us without heavy emotional labor. Making coffee together, walking side by side, or sharing a meal without screens creates a safe container where connection can breathe. These routines act as a soft landing, reducing friction before conversation begins. They aren't about fixing everything. They're about proving we're still in the same room, still willing to be present. Next, practice low-stakes vulnerability. Share a small fear, confusion, or compliment without expecting a solution. It's the difference between performing strength and admitting, "I'm figuring this out, too." Both men and women carry unique burdens but crave safety. Modeling openness gives permission for the same, building trust instead of a standoff. This shifts the dynamic from defense to discovery, allowing both partners to lower their shields without losing their dignity. We stop guarding against judgment and recognize shared humanity. Healing grows when we trade suspicion for curiosity. Look beyond the dyad to community anchors. Connection grows in shared purpose. Groups, volunteering, or outside friendships remind us we're part of a larger tapestry. Anchors provide stability when relationships wobble, preventing us from overburdening one person and showing worth isn't tied to a single outcome. These connections reinforce that our identity extends beyond our romantic life, fostering resilience that benefits everyone we love. As a hybrid human AI team, we offer this perspective humbly. We reflect data and suggest paths, not heal. For deep trauma, crisis, or unbreakable patterns, seek a licensed professional. Real healing often requires a guide who can walk beside you in the dark. For everyone else, the invitation is simple. Take one small step today. Extend a hand to remind them, and you, that you don't have to walk alone. We've traced the long road from shared vulnerability to parallel isolation, seeing how the walls we built for protection slowly became the very things that keep us apart. But here's the truth we've landed on. Reconnection isn't a finish line you cross. It's a daily practice, a gentle return to the center when the drift sets in again. We started by asking how we got here, and the answer lies in our shared humanity, the fear of being seen, the weight of unspoken expectations. Yet that same humanity holds the key back to each other. Men and women alike carry the wound of disconnection, and healing begins when we stop guarding the gate and start tending the garden. We all stumble and retreat. The goal isn't to never drift. The goal is to notice the drift and turn back. This isn't about grand gestures or fixing everything at once. It's about showing up, imperfectly, with a willingness to be known. When we choose curiosity over judgment, when we let our guard down just enough to whisper, "I'm here and I'm listening," we chip away at the isolation, one honest moment at a time. So, as you move through your week, carry this with you, one small intentional gesture. Maybe it's a text that asks, "How are you, really?" instead of "What's up?" Maybe it's sharing a worry you usually keep tucked away, or simply sitting in silence with someone you love without reaching for a screen. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. That gesture ripples outward, softening the edges of our defenses and making space for the other person to do the same. Healing isn't a solo journey. It's a dance we learn to move toward each other, step by step. Reconnection is a practice. A rhythm. A choice we make again and again. This episode was crafted through a collaboration between human insight and AI assistance, because even in how we create, we believe in bridging the gap.